Hi, I'm Bradley Sliedrecht with Fenter Cranes. Today we're focusing on one of the most critical safety components of your crane, the brakes. Whether you run Demag, R&M, Condra, Street, Shawbox, Kone, GH or any other make, the brake is what holds the load when the motor isn't running. If the brake fails, the load falls. That's why CSA B167 and ASME B30 require regular brake inspections, adjustments and maintenance. So crane brakes are designed to fail to safety systems, right? That means if power is cut, the brake spring is applied and automatically holds the load. But brakes wear, linings glaze, air gaps widen, and torque capacity drops. If inspections are skipped, you risk slipping loads, long stopping distances, or uncontrolled drops. CSA B167 requires brakes to be inspected at scheduled intervals, adjusted to maintain holding capacity, and replaced if they show excessive wear, heat damage, or scoring. The standard specifically requires that brakes provide at least 125% of rated load torque on hoists without mechanical load brakes. Also, your specific crane's maintenance manual or the hoist manual that was supplied with your equipment will have its own brake maintenance criteria. These need to be followed. So different hoists use different brake systems, and knowing which type you have determines how you inspect and adjust it. Ensure you follow the brake adjustment guide for your crane found in your crane's maintenance manual, or consult a qualified crane technician. So the following are only guidelines for the purpose of this training. Conical brakes found in Demag hoists, older Kone models, Kito chain hoists. The motor shaft and the cone surface act together. So brake torque is adjusted by measuring rotor displacement, lining wear travel or actual displacement travel through an inspection port. So what happens is this brake will move forward with the rotor. The hub will remain, the brake disc will move forward, right? The cone will move forward. So usually there's an inspection port somewhere over here. If you remove that cap, you can push it and measure how far it moves forward, right? So as the linings wear, the displacement grows. If you reach lining wear travel or actual displacement travel max, the brake must be adjusted to lining wear travel or actual displacement travel minimum. Always remove the load before adjusting. Flat disc brakes found in R&M, Street, Condra brakes, and many modern Demag models. These brakes use pads pressing on a flat disc, your armature plate. So inspection involves checking wear travel or actual displacement travel, the air gap, pad thickness, and disc condition. Too wide a gap means slipping, too tight, overheating, or contact damage. Right, so this is a little Condra brake. This is off a bridge travel. Your trolley motor on your Condra, usually they're about the same size, right? Little brake disc, your plate, springs. So when this one is energized, the plate will move forward, the brake disc will stay in place, and that gap now from the plate moving forward to the brake disc, that's the gap we're talking about measuring here, right? On a Condra brake, usually between 0.5 and 0.8 millimeter is the distance that you want to set your brake gap to, right? Drum or band brakes found on some legacy Shawbox, GH, and other hoists, right? These are usually much bigger, and they'll clamp a big drum, right? These use a shoe or a band wrapping around a drum. Inspections involve lining wear or actual displacement travel, right? Checking lining wear, shoe clearance, and spring tension. So let's look at measurements and adjustments in a little bit more detail here. So conical brakes, like the Demag, the Kone, some of the kiddos, measure the rotor displacement, lining wear, or actual displacement travel with the gauge at the brake end, right? So as I said, your cover would be this side. This will move forward. Here is your brake end, right? Then compare that measurement, right, that distance to the OEM brake table for that motor. If it exceeds lining wear travel or the actual displacement travel max, separate the brake disc, rotate the adjustment nut, right, anti-clockwise, and reset it to the manufacturer's specific adjustment, right, the travel distance allowed by the manufacturer. Replace linings if the cone surface is glazed or thickness is below spec, right? You'll find the spec in the manuals of what the brake disc should be, right? Glazing is pretty easy to see. You can see these shiny spots on the video. A bit of sandpaper, you rough that up so it's good as new, and the brake will hold just like a new one again, right? Disc brakes, so R&M, SX, Kone, Street, Condra, like the one I showed you. I'll actually use that one again. This is a typical SX brake disc or Kone brake disc, right? That's typically what the disc would look like. Condra, you'll see they have a spline cut in them. That's a Condra brake disc. It's typically what they look like. On your bigger ones, your smaller Condra are just a little guy, right? So you use 3 feeler gauges, 120 degrees apart, to measure the gap, right? Why do we do that? So when we're adjusting it, we're making sure we're square, right? If it wears square, if it wears off, the disc will wear off, right? So note, some brakes are self-adjusting, and the pad only requires deglazing. There's no adjustment. You'll find this on a lot of the CXTs and those type of hoists where there is no adjustment, right? When you take it apart, you're taking it apart just to deglaze it, putting it back together, and it's completely self-adjusting, right? But if your gap is too wide, right, if your disc is worn too far down for the adjustment to self-adjust, then the load will slip, right? If it's too tight, so if it is one that's adjustable and you adjust it and you over tighten it, it's going to overheat, right? I've seen bigger brakes actually catch fire from maintenance staff over adjusting them, right, because they didn't know. They just went too tight, tried to run it, and starts a fire inside there, a little bit of oil inside the cavity or the brake lining, and it sets on fire, right? So adjust by shimming or turning the adjusting ring until the gap is even across all points. So when you measure, like these Condra brakes, you'll see there'll be 3 adjustment bolts. Make sure it's even when you measure your plate, right? Your plate should sit flat on your brake lining, between your coil and your armature plate. Pad and disc condition. So check pad thickness. We'll use this one as an example, right? Your pad thickness. Your manufacturer's manual, right? Your operating manual will give you the thickness of the pad, the minimum and the maximum thicknesses of these pads. Always check against the OEM minimums, right? Look for cracks, like I said, glazing, oil contamination, or discoloration, right? Why would you look for oil contamination? Well, if there's oil on your brake disc, it might slip even if it's adjusted properly, right? Replace if linings are burnt, scored, or unevenly worn, right? Drum band brakes. So for these type of brakes, you need to check your shoe clearance with feeler gauges. This is a much bigger brake, right? When these brakes open, the shoes will come off the drum. You can easily see when they're off. When it closes, it'll slam again on the drum, right? Inspect brake band or shoe linings for wear beyond 10%. Confirm springs provide full pressure when the power is off, right? Common failures. Here's what operators and maintenance staff should watch out for. A load that drifts down after you stop hoisting, right? Don't confuse that with some PLC control that's on the cranes, right? Sometimes the PLC, what will happen when you let the button go, it'll go back up very slightly and then stop, right? It does that so it holds the load on the downstroke. Instead of just running down, it'll go down a bit. Then when you let the button go, it'll come up very slightly and then hold the load, right? So a load that drifts down after you stop hoisting, so you let the hoisting button go and it just keeps going down, there's a problem. Your brake needs to be adjusted. A burning smell or black brake dust around the motor, right? Jerky stops instead of smooth braking. Audible grinding or squealing. If you've ever driven a car where your brake pads need to be changed, you sometimes hear that steel on steel rubbing when the pad's worn down. That's what you'll hear on your crane, right? That steel grinding or squealing. Each of these is a warning sign that the brake needs inspection and adjustment, right? A simple daily check is to lift a light load just clear of the floor. Stop and see if the load holds. If it creeps or slips, tag the hoist motor out of service immediately. Technicians should perform detailed measurements of displacement, air gap, lining thickness, and torque during frequent and periodic inspections, right? But what do you need to remember as a crane owner or operator, or perhaps you the maintenance guy doing your periodic inspections, right? All brakes are spring applied power release safety devices, right? As I showed you on this Condra brake, there's springs in there, so you can see how that would operate, right? Important to look at your springs, especially when you're in corrosive environments, because once these springs break, your brake's not going to function. So inspect air gaps, displacement, and lining thickness regularly, right? Inspecting your lining thickness also allows you to plan for preventative maintenance instead of waiting till you've broken down, right? Reactive maintenance. It's just loss of time, loss of production. Let's rather plan. Follow CSA B167 and ASME B30 intervals for frequent and periodic inspections, right? You also need to check your specific equipment maintenance manual. It might require a different schedule, right? More frequent. These are things that are often missed by owners, right? Always adjust brakes before they reach the maximum allowable displacements or air gap. And use OEM parts. Demag, R&M, Condra, Street, Shawbox, Kone, GH, and others. Each has specific wear limits. You need to look through your manual to see what these wear limits are. You can't just adjust and let me say, for example, a Demag to Condra specs, right? Or perhaps a Street to Condra specs, or Shawbox to Street, and so on and so forth, right? Each has specific wear limits. Each model even often has specific wear limits. So make sure you know the right information when you adjust these hoists, right? In the years that I've been in this industry, I've seen hoist brakes over tightened, and even on the old Demag P series with the big conical brakes, where guys have over tightened these things and it's smashed and it's broken the whole back housing of the motor off, right? Load drop, nothing holding it, this thing just spins, hits the deck, right? Fortunately, I haven't seen any major injuries, but I've seen lots of property damage because of brakes that have been adjusted badly, right? Usually by people that don't have any knowledge on brake adjustment. This isn't just like putting brake pads in a car, right? There's a specific air gap that each hoist needs to maintain for the brakes to function properly. They can't be too tight, they can't be too loose, right? There's a range. For example, Condra 0.5 to 0.8 millimeter. There's your range on majority of your brakes on a Condra, right? You need to stay within those ranges. So at Fenter Cranes, we specialize in inspecting, adjusting, and replacing hoist, bridge, trolley brakes according to OEM and CSA standards, right? All these training videos are available on YouTube, so you can go back and watch them at any time. Follow this page for more crane safety and maintenance insights. Again, my name is Bradley Sliedrecht. I'm the president of Fenter Cranes. I've been a crane technician since 1996. And thanks for joining me in this video, and I'll see you in the next video.